Good evening, folks. Professor Finn here, everyone's favorite funeral service educator and homeless mall Santa, and the homeless mall Santa vibe is strong with the chubby little cherub here, man. Look at all this gray. Look at all this gray. So, been a while since I've been in the saddle. Sorry for the wait. You can see the garage sale going on back here on the work table. Getting stuff ready for the American Board of Funeral Service Education Conference coming up here in April. April 12th to 17th, all the educators will be in Houston, Texas for an educators conference. That is their time to pick up some stuff at the Mortafin Consulting and Training table. So Professor Finn's free gifts are there. If you are a student, I'm going to be debuting some of the things that are on the table. You feel free to tell your professor to pick something up for you. Make sure they bring it back. So, first thing that we have up, I'm pretty cool. I thought these were pretty cool. So, fidget spinners were pretty popular last year. So I'm going to be making some more fidget sort of giveaways. And I found these little skeleton ones on the old 3D printer here. Now I know that the stage lighting here isn't going to do too hot, but there is a place for a keychain. I will have keychain rings, and I'm probably going to make a bunch of these because I'm making them in different colors. So for those of you who want the white skull with the pink brain, that is there. For those of you who actually want like bone-colored skulls with a pink brain, those will be there as well. Just because I found these and I thought these were cool as heck, I'm going to be 3D printing a bunch of dumpster fires because of course I am. So I'll have a stack of these. I think I'm going to do all these just in traditional green. Maybe do different flames between red and orange or yellow or something like that. So I might have some variety there. So I'll have a good stock of that. I always bring useful stuff for the Mortafin table. And the first thing that I am bringing, because I have found this to be extremely useful for me, is a little set of brass knuckles. Not so much. So what this foolish thing does is it allows you to hook your phone so that your pinky doesn't go underneath, so you don't hurt your pinky trying to prop your phone up while you're using it. So I'll probably have a fairly good bunch of these there in different sort of colors. I find it to be useful, especially if I'm sitting on the couch and I get an email or something. I can just pop this on, sit there, and do what I need to do, and my pinky doesn't go crazy. Last but not least, educators, this was popular last year, so I'm going to be bringing a couple more of these to the table this year. I'm going to have the full-size skulls. So last year, I went through and I cleaned up the 3D prints. And I am not going to do that this time for two major reasons. The first reason is I'm lazy. And the second reason is if you have to transport this back, I don't want to knock teeth out or something like that, so all the supports can stay in place until you get home, and then you just need a pair of flush cutters or something like that to help trim some of the smaller areas, pull off some of the bigger areas. But these are wonderful little learning aids that you can use in the classroom. Again, these are pretty much full-size skulls. Very, very detailed. I had 2 last year. They went poof very quickly. I'll probably have about 3 or 4 this year. Houston's right down the road here from Dallas, so I'm going to be driving down. I'll take the truck. It's not a big deal for me to have a couple of these on hand. So if you want one of these free for your classroom, it's going to cost you a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears to trim off some of the supports. But otherwise, heck of a good articulated skull. Really useful. And again, free of charge. Can't beat the price on it. So let's go ahead and get the screen shared. Chat is up. For anyone who's got questions, feel free to drop something in the chat. First big thing that I want to talk about. Let's go ahead and push some of these things around real quick. There we go. Now, boom, 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 boom. Let's see. Okay, so that's over here. Let's swap this stuff out. Just occurred to me that I used to have the little monitor down here in front of me. I have sent that broke, and I opted not to replace it solely because that wasn't cheap. That was a pen tablet monitor, and it broke within like 2 years. Just broke one day. Everything stopped working. Displayed as a monitor, fine, but if it's a pen monitor, you really want the pen monitor to work. So yeah, it kind of stunk. First up. National Funeral Directors Association is the largest professional association for funeral professionals in the United States, and it just so happens that my buddy Carlton May is running for secretary of that organization. I've known Carlton a couple of years. Phenomenal guy, and I'm really happy to support him in his bid for NFDA secretary. He has served 2 years as member at large. He is a professor at the Gupton Jones College of Funeral Service and an active funeral service professional. So if you are on the fence as to who you should support, please feel free to visit Carlton May for NFDA at Facebook. He's also got a website that you can find. I can pull that up here in a second because I'd have to open my email. But fact of the matter is, if you don't have anyone you're already throwing for, by all means, throw Professor May a vote. He appreciates it. It's always wonderful to have education professionals in high places so they can always keep education at the forefront. And the person running for president this year is Professor Steve Spann over at the John A. Gupton School, and that's going to be phenomenal to have an NFDA president who's also a sitting president of a mortuary school. So this is a really, really great year for educators and the professional associations. Please consider Professor May for your vote for NFDA. He appreciates it. I appreciate it. And let's move on. So I'm going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to jump over there to Funeral Director Daily and review some of the stuff that Tom Anderson's been posting. But then I want to jump to some posts that I have copied from a Facebook group that I think might be beneficial to talk about. I've also got a couple of things I screenshotted, questions I'm going to address, and I think that they will be beneficial for as an educational purpose. So I want to go ahead and pull that up right now, actually. Get that all preset. Here we go. Okay, so that's ready to go. First things first, man's best friend and their grief and grit. Today's edition of Funeral Director Daily will be a little different, and I hope you enjoy it. It's not about the business of death care, although you might find reason to believe that therapy dogs that are now making their way into the business of the funeral home have merit after reading today's edition. I don't even need to read today's edition to know that if you have a therapy dog at the funeral home, that's a pretty good idea. The idea for today's article came when Angie and I decided to go to church in the park in our winter rental home community of Naples. Naples is a cool city. I love Naples. One Sunday instead of attending our normal church. Turns out that the Sunday we decided to go to the service was their Bless the Animals Sunday. While we're at this church service, we're reminded that through the sermon of United States Navy SEAL John Tumilston and his dog Hawkeye. Tumilston was killed in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan in 2011, and his casketed services were held in his former high school in Iowa shortly thereafter. As you may remember, Hawkeye, unprompted, moved to the casket and laid still by it for the entirety of the funeral. The following is a short news clip from that time that shows Hawkeye at his master's casket. Story of Balto. While we were at the service listening to the sermon, it reminded me of our best friends and their place in our world. One such dog I was reminded of was Balto, known for delivering life-saving medicine to the children of Nome, Alaska in 1925. I also thought of Balto partly because the short children's story of it was one of our son's favorite nighttime stories to have read to him. Later on, that was made into an animated movie, which I have not seen. Finally, I thought of Balto and Death Care World and the Death Care World because after Balto's natural lifespan, he was preserved and continues to be on display at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. I had always been under the impression that Balto had been anatomically embalmed, such as Russia's Vladimir Lenin has been, for the display to continue to be exhibited. However, through a little more research, learned that Balto's preservation was more upon the taxidermy method, which is what I would have assumed. Here is what the Cleveland Museum of Natural History says in part about their exhibit of Balto. Following Balto's natural death in 1933, his mount was put on display at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. Today, he remains a shining example of triumph in the face of incredible odds and a representation of one of humanity's greatest partnerships with another species. Balto also serves as a symbol of Cleveland's philanthropic tradition, a spirit of generosity that endures in the community today. As one of the museum's most treasured icons, now showcased in a new visitor hall exhibit sponsored by the Milton and Tamara Maltz Family Foundation, Balto continues to inspire visitors and captivate the popular imagination through his story. The Great Race of Mercy. If you don't know the story of Balto, the Great Race of Mercy, and how he and others delivered life-saving diphtheria medicine that the 654 miles from Nenana to Nome in the Alaskan wilderness through snowstorms and temperatures that reach as low as negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit in a record 127 hours, or 5.5 days back in 1925. There's a little link here that you can watch to get more about that. Tom's Take is not your normal funeral director daily article, but I thought with the growing use of therapy dogs in funeral homes, it would be appropriate to learn more of the emotions of these animals, and how we are continuing to learn about their calming emotions may be helpful in the funeral home setting to some family members with potential grief issues. So one thing that I'll say regarding that is don't just limit it to your therapy dogs. Consider having a pet-friendly funeral home policy where owners can bring in their pets with them. The best therapy dog is their dog, and certainly you would want the ability for a deceased's pet to come and say goodbye at the funeral home. That is something that I think more and more families are going to insist upon, as pets have gotten very popular since the COVID pandemic. So having a pet-friendly policy would probably be in your best interests from a business standpoint. Now, I will admit that I did read this one prior to tonight, so this is not a cold read. I was aware, as you can read here, that in 2025, the United States Environmental Association published the findings of their risk evaluation of formaldehyde. After years of evaluation and input, the EPA ruled that the use of formaldehyde for embalming is exempt from regulations under the Toxic Substance Control Act, TSCA. That ruling came as a big relief to funeral homes and embalming supply companies. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, the EPA still needs to develop draft management controls to address formaldehyde risks. These controls will be subject to public review and comment before finalization. NFDA made that statement in early 2025 and also mentioned that because of the new presidential administration coming into office at the time, the Trump administration, in case you've been living in a cave and don't know who the president was or was going to be installed at that time, it may be some time before the EPA makes that move. To my knowledge, the new administration has not moved forward with developing those controls as of this time period. So it was interesting when I saw the recent headline about a university that had had its anatomy lab shut down for high levels of formaldehyde because of repeated air quality tests. However, it was at a Canadian university, and I'm going to butcher this, Dalhousie University, located in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with additional labs located in Cape Breton and St. John. So if I butchered that, feel free to drop the International Phonetic Alphabet way of saying that, or a, layperson's way of trying to say it. And if I didn't, tell me I did okay, folks. Drop that in the comments or in the chat. The February 2026 article, which you can access here from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, actually states that the lab and those shut down in Cape Breton and St. John for precautionary reasons will reopen for the fall 2026 semester. Doing a little research, I found an article from October 2025 that you can access here that announced the closing of the anatomy labs at the medical school campuses of Dalhousie University in Halifax, Cape Breton, and St. John. Here are some quotes from that article. In a lengthy letter to students, the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine said that the anatomy lab in the Tupper building was tested over the summer, and results showed that formaldehyde levels no longer meet provincial standards. The school attempted to fix the problem through changes to the ventilation system, but it failed a second round of tests. In his letter to students, Dalhousie University official Dr. David Anderson said that Nova Scotia follows a threshold set by the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists. This was the first time formaldehyde was tested in a decade. When the tests were done this summer, Dalhousie discovered that Nova Scotia had lowered the acceptable level in 2017. So, already a problem here, folks. The government lowered a level, and then they found out after the fact, nearly 8 years later, that the level had changed.
Oopsies.
We have a problem. We have a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we have problems.
Although our test results are no longer compliant with the Nova Scotia, our current testing levels at the Tupper building are compliant with the previous allowable thresholds in Nova Scotia and the current allowable thresholds in New Brunswick. Solving the problem. According to the second article that mentions that the school is now past the monitoring and will reopen in the fall, it also mentions that the problem was resolved in part by trying new techniques to embalm cadavers using lower levels of formaldehyde. It's almost like when you're going to do formaldehyde testing, you probably want to use the lowest index possible, maybe with closed drainage. Maybe. The article goes on to say that air quality testing has been completed using these newly embalmed specimens, and the results met long-term exposure guidelines. The article also states that the problem seems to have been rectified by the embalming decision and by making changes to the ventilation system by installing 4 dissection tables that are designed to draw air downward, away from students and instructors. Oh boy. Who wants to tell the Canadians that we've known that formaldehyde is a heavy gas and it sinks to the floor and you want your ventilation to pull it away since like the 1980s? Oh boy. I think it's time to hit the cup.
2 shots of vodka. Then
Yep. Just saying. Just saying. Funeral Director Daily Take. I think that this is an interesting article simply for the fact that when facing adversity, you may find more than one way to defeat the problem. In this case, open the doors, open the windows, and let air in. In this case, most people would think about the mechanical redesign of the preparation room, but it also appears that the people at Dalhousie University also looked at the embalming process to see if there was something they could do to lower formaldehyde exposure during the process. In Dalhousie, if you are ever going to listen to this, I recommend some light reading in the form of a book called Embalming, History, Theory, and Practice by my friend Sharon G. Mascarello. Or you can pick up one of the older versions by Robert G. Mayer. They have an entire section on how to design a prep room so that people don't get sick. Now, in Dalhousie's defense, typically outside the United States, exposure levels are significantly lower than here in the U.S. And also outside of the United States, governmental bodies test for other vapors that we don't even test for. So, for instance, I'm aware in the United Kingdom that they test for alcohol vapor, just plain old isopropyl alcohol. They test for alcohol vapor. It can't exceed a certain level in the workplace. That's not even on the radar here in the United States in the prep room. While this article has a death care component to it, I think the big takeaway from this article is about the importance of creatively solving problems. The situation is a great reminder to look at all possible solutions when faced with adversity, and that pertains to not only business issues, but life issues as well. And my takeaway from this is that you just need to follow the instructions in your embalming book from when you were in mortuary school, if you were lucky enough to use Robert G. Mayer's book while you were in school. Because that book has always advocated for using the lowest possible index to get the job done. There is no reason to hit the 90-year-old grandma with Intrafiant unless the situation calls for it. So don't be reaching for 30 index just to reach for 30 index. A best practice is to limit to the acceptable chemical with the least index to get the job done. Just saying. It's the political season. Watch your messaging. Or it's the first day on the internet. Anything you say can and will be against you in perpetuity. You would have to be living under a rock in the United States if you did not notice the large and seemingly growing gap between the political parties at this time. Or perhaps the gap that's been growing for the last decade. I'm guessing that at no time in my life have I seen such a large chasm between the beliefs of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I'll get behind that 100%. And I'm just going to say hold on to your beer because that chasm's probably going to get even wider. In November of this year, we'll have midterm elections where all the seats of the U.S. Congress are up for re-election as well as many other positions. When was this published? March 24th, yeah. When we are in an even year when all U.S. congressional seats are up for grabs, there is no geographic area of the United States that won't be touched in hearing about all the elections. Yep, and my phone is already going off, and thank God for block lists. Let me tell you what. Quickest way on earth to get me to vote for anyone other than you, solicit me on my cell phone when I don't ask for it. Hate that crap. When the perceived stakes are high and there is universal knowledge of all the elections saying or doing the wrong thing from a death care business point of view could damage your business. So be careful how you express yourself in going about your business's messaging in the next 7 months or so. I'm going to up that. You should be careful what you are saying if you are a business owner or a manager or a funeral director at all times. You never know who is going to walk through your door. You are never going to know whether or not they know you from a TikTok video or a reel or an Instagram post. You live in a fishbowl when you are a funeral director. So you should always be on guard. Lately, the Target Corporation has been in the news, partly because of how their business has suffered pertaining to how they handle the trends of the LGBTQ community and later the DEI community. I just learned something. I thought they were the same. If you remember, the company offered a pride selection of merchandise that gained favor with the LGBTQ community. Then in 2023, the company scaled back in-store displays and reduced product availability following intense conservative backlash and employee safety threats. Okay? In that case, the original Pride merchandise offended conservative shoppers, and then pulling the product lines back offended the more liberal shoppers. Great way of managing literally to piss everybody off. Way to go, Target. Later, Target announced that they would be moving forward with positive diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Okay. You literally just pissed off your entire conservative population. And then you're going to announce they're going to be moving forward with DEI stuff. Bro, pick your targeted community and stick with it. Just do it. Because you're never going to make them all happy. So just decide who it is that basically you want to sell to, and then hope you pick up some of the other people. Like, come on. And then later, according to this USA Today article, the company rolled back their DEI efforts, again, first irritating conservatives and later irritating liberals. Which, I'm just going to say, if they keep on doing that, just wait for that stock to get lower, buy yourself a stack of it. Target should bounce back at some point, and you should be able to get some gain on it. I certainly don't know Target's motives in these moves, but do realize that their public stances were not well taken with the differing groups at differing times. Well, their public stance is, we want to make money. We want to make money from as many people as possible. And, oops, by making public announcements and backing off of those decisions, they succeeded in the business-losing result of alienating both factions and turning back any loyalty that they had from those customer groups.
This is some bullshit.
If you look at Target sales according to Seeking Alpha from 2023 until most recently with their 2025 sales, you will see that they dropped about 4.1% over that time. And for a company like Target, 4.1% is significant. And that is a time period that even if the same amount of product was purchased, sales should have rose about 5% annually simply because of inflation. So they got kicked pretty swift in the pants. Contrast those to the sales of their biggest competitor, Walmart, whose sales grew by 16.7%. And you might concur that Target's messaging to its clientele possibly had something to do with their reduction in revenues. Learning a valuable lesson. I learned a valuable lesson from my dad about political messaging when I was in 9th grade. One of my classmates' fathers was running for the U.S. Congress, and my friend asked if we wanted a sign for him in our front yard. I knew my parents liked the candidate and were pulling for him, so I said yes. Anyway, when my father came home from work that night, he saw the sign for candidate John Haven and said, "This is a Haven house." His response was as such as I related in the article of Funeral Director Daily from July 2024. Needless to say, my dad came home and inquired about the sign. I proudly proclaimed that I got it from the Havens and put it up. As my dad was great at calmly doing, he explained to me that our funeral home served all people, all races, all nationalities, all church denominations, and all political parties. It would probably not be a good idea to alienate those people who opposed Mr. Haven by having a sign in our yard. That all made sense to me. So you probably have your own political views, but I might suggest that you balance and think about the repercussions about being bold with them in your community, as they may very well alienate a part of your community from using your business in the future. You may very well want to stress your political affiliation and beliefs, and that is your prerogative as an American citizen. 100% behind Tom on that. And for those of you that choose to do so, I have no issues with, other than you are aware that it may affect your business in a negative or maybe positive fashion. So, I lived in South Florida. I was born in Massachusetts, moved to South Florida. Now I'm in Texas. Very different political climates. Here in Texas, there seems to be a race for people to determine just how right-wing they can be. Whereas back in Florida, you're either Republican or you're Democrat, you're right-wing or left-wing, and that's about it. But here, you, as a candidate, can lose because you are simply not right-wing enough. That's a little culture shock to me, because that's a little crazy. But whatever. It's your vote. Do what you want with it. But as running a business, you need to decide that if you are going to pick a side, then that is where you're going to make your money from. And you're probably going to have to go all in on that, especially in today's climate. You're not really going to have a choice in the matter. Or you simply stay out of that and live with it. It's that simple. When you go to the polls, you vote for who you want to vote for, and you vote your conscience. But when it comes to your business, as we're talking politics, you might hear my dogs losing their mind in the background. I don't know what that's about. Your business can suffer because of your political and religious views. And we as funeral directors, we need to be approachable to the members in our community. So do what is right for you. Vote your conscience nonetheless. But Target is proving a very good point. Pick one, stay with one. Because in today's climate, you're not going to make any friends if you jump back and forth. A comedian I liked for a very long time is a guy by the name of Adam Carolla. Adam leans very strongly to the right. And Adam has basically said that his point of view on all of this is, I'm not going to apologize. If I say something you don't like it, I'm not apologizing. Because then I upset the people who thought it was funny, and you're not going to like it anyways. You're probably not going to listen to me, so why would I apologize? And I think that that's probably the best thing that you can do if you're going to take a side on something. Pick that side, stick with that side, and there you are. That's that. But as a funeral director, your best choice is probably not to pick the side. Not publicly, at least. Funeral directors, same compassion, new methods. Give me just a second, jump over to chat. Don't see anything in the chat. Jump back to the article. Compassion has always been present in the role of funeral director. This recent article on the Mortuary Science program at the University of Minnesota quotes Director Michael Lou Brandt. Shout out to my homie, Dr. Michael Lou Brandt. Great researcher. As saying, it's such a unique field and it isn't something a lot of people think of. But Lubran also says that the characteristics for success remain constant, as he is also quoted as saying the profession requires the ability to deal in a calm and rational manner when there's so much stress going on at so many levels. Truer words never spoken. Dr. Lubran has been at the University of Minnesota for over 25 years. And the article also says this about how funeral directors have changed and what they do in that time. In his quarter century heading the program, he's witnessed the mortuary science industry change dramatically. Traditional burials used to be the norm, but now a majority of Americans are choosing cremation. Decades ago, the field was dominated by men, but now 2/3 to 3/4 of the students are women. That's at his school. There are some schools where it's more like 90+ to 100% of the student population is now women. While Lubran talks about the same compassion among those in the program, the article also talks about how that compassion is being put to work in different ways than the traditional funerals of the past. One student highlighted in the article is Colby Voigt. Voigt graduated from the University of Minnesota program in 2013 and went to work for a funeral home. Voigt is quoted in the article about how it was when he first went to work, when he says, "Forever, it's been about just doing things the way they've always been done. We call the same funeral home, we go to the same church, we sit down and say the same prayers, and eat the same crappy ham sandwiches." Elevate your ham sandwiches with some sauces, with some salsa. Life's too short to live with crappy ham sandwiches. We are now in 2026, over a dozen years after Voigt graduated, and here's what the article says about Voigt and his duties today. Voigt confirms that the massive shifts in disposition preferences, noting that the cremation rate in Forest Lake is now up to 90%. He also says that families have changed their expectations for memorial services. To adapt to a changing palette, Voigt has helped launch a new funeral home brand, Send Off Funerals Reimagined, that hosts personalized events at venues across the Twin Cities and beyond. Voigt is quoted on the subject, "We're taking it out of the box and giving people what they want." What I always love about stuff like that is people think it's new. I graduated from mortuary school in 2008. Sorry, graduated mortuary school in 2007. I was fully licensed by 2008. Back then, Ralph Clicker was talking about that in his textbook. MKJ Marketing was part of the curriculum, telling you how to shake up funerals. You had all sorts of people going around and saying, "Hey, you need to do things different. Let's talk about a wow factor. Let's do cool stuff." That message still has not sunk in. Mortuary schools have not changed. We have been teaching that solidly for decades. And I don't understand the resistance. I don't. But the one thing I can tell you is people like Mr. Voigt, their businesses are going to excel because once people find out that there's something better at a comparable price, they're going to take it. Excellent example of this. Professor Finn's a fat kid, okay? And this fat kid likes barbecue. So it just so happens that I'm pretty well placed in Texas because we have some great barbecue. Hardest thing in Texas is deciding which barbecue you like the best because there is so much good barbecue. Now, back in Tampa Bay, barbecue is quite limited. Really is. 1, 2, maybe 3 places. The biggest place, and the place I probably frequented the most when I was in Florida, was Sonny's Barbecue. So I'm a very proud brother of Phi Mu Alpha Symphonia. And the brothers of Upsilon Psi Chapter at the University of South Florida, shout out to my homies, they used to go to Sonny's all the time. And the running joke was they just started calling it the gym so it didn't sound like they're always going to the barbecue place. They said, "Hey, you want to go to the gym?" "Oh, yeah, I want to go to the gym." So they went to the gym. Finally, I asked them, "Well, y'all going to work?" I was like, "Oh, no, we're going over to Sonny's. We're getting lunch." And it's like, "Oh, okay. I see what you did there. That's pretty cool." So I traditionally have not eaten a lot of barbecue. Now, it's been a very long time since I've had Sonny's. So I can't tell you how Sunny stacks up to the stuff I have here in Texas. Chances are pretty good. Not going to stack up pretty high. But next time in Tampa Bay, I'm probably going to hit up a Sunny's just to hit up a Sunny's and see what I'm getting into. But over here in my general area of Dallas, I've got Dickies. I've got Smoke Monkey over there in Royce City. I've got Smoke Sessions here in Royce City. I've got Solman's, multiple locations throughout this area. Tons of places to get barbecue. And so, when I find a new place I want to try barbecue, I've got a pattern. I go in, I get half rack of ribs, quarter pound of sliced brisket. If they got sausage, I get their sausage or kielbasa. If they got jalapeno and cheddar, sausage or kielbasa, I get that as well. Those are the 4 things I get every single time I try a new barbecue place. Now, I'm eating for the next 2 or 3 days, don't take me wrong, but I try all of it because I'm trying to find my perfect combination. Will I pay more for something I like? 100% I will. But I can tell you my go-to place for a very, very long time was Smoke Sessions here in Royce City. One time I went out with one of my co-workers, a guy by the name of Wayne Cavender, former president of the Dallas Institute, and we met at Solomons for lunch. And I can't say that the Solomons that we went to over there off of Goliad in, I think that's Rockwall, impressed me too much. I went to the Solomons over here just north of Royce City, or just east of Royce City. Completely different experience. Solomons is now my go-to. Solomons is also cheaper. But one thing I found out, jalapeno cheddar sausage, Dickies. Dickies Barbecue has the best. And as for a great gumbo, Smoke Monkeys over in Rockwall. Their barbecue's not bad. If it's nearby, Smoke Monkeys is a great place to go. But their gumbo at Smoke Monkeys, that beats up most Cajun places I've ever eaten at. It is on par with the stuff that I get in Louisiana. And legit, when my friends visit and we're going to have like a little barbecue party, I've already got the route planned out. Starting at Smoke Monkeys to get the gumbo, coming back. Their jalapeno sausage also rivals Dickies, so I'll probably just get the jalapeno sausage there and save a trip to go to Dickies. And then, on the way back, I'm going to hit up Solomons. I will pay more for something if I'm getting better service. But absolutely, if I can get that same level of service cheaper, I'm going to take it. And if a person is comparable and delivers better service, that is a no-brainer decision for me. No-brainer at all. This article sums up Voight and his satisfaction as a funeral director, whether it has been in the traditional realm, the cremation realm, or the funerals reimagined realm, where he says, this is a very meaningful way that you can give back to the community. You're making a lasting impact on someone's life. When they're able to have that experience and when they're able to grieve properly because of that, intrinsically, it's the best feeling. And that's what I love about this job. I wouldn't be able to get that in any other career path, and that is the truth, man. I, to this day, still miss doing funerals because of the intrinsic reward of doing it right. Seeing how that affects a person, a family, nothing like it. There really isn't. Dr. LeBrant, the director of the University of Mortuary Science program, sums up a little of what Voight says when he talks about the role of the funeral director. LeBrant says, I think there really is a sense of the sacred to what we do. We're talking about people's loved ones, hands that you've held, lips that you've touched, bodies that you've hugged. Until it's someone that you know, that you love, that was dear to your heart, I don't think one can fully understand the depth and the profundity of the impact of what we do. And that is true. So many people become funeral directors because of funeral directors. Isn't that crazy? They become funeral directors because of a good experience. They become funeral directors because of bad experiences, because they don't want people to go through that again. I did not really suffer my closest deaths until after I was a funeral director. I made mistakes. I did not take the time to grieve. And of all people, I should know better. I went through school for it. I tell other people about it. I still made mistakes. But most certainly, I understand the impact much better. And the last time I needed it for the funeral of my dad, I was very lucky to be able to go to a person I used to work with. And that level of comfort, knowing that I am letting someone I know and I trust handling that, that is a level of comfort. I can also tell you if something bad would have happened, it would have shattered me. Which is why when I see people that have a bad funeral experience, how that messes them up, I can empathize because that's in my head. That is now in my head. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the presence of greatness. We have Professor Howard Becken of Florida State College of Jacksonville listening in.
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution, the depth of faith to go as far as is needed?
Once again, if you're a regular listener, you want your own character intro, you let me know, you give me a scene, and I'll make sure that I make that happen. So, Howard, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. I know it's a little bit later over there on Florida land. So, Tom Anderson's take. I enjoyed writing this article because I'm a graduate of the University of Minnesota School of Mortuary Science, and also had the added opportunity to partially oversee the department during my duties as a board member of the University of Minnesota. You got to quote that the University of Minnesota is a great program. I visited there. Dr. Lou Brandt's awesome. Like, Dr. Lou Brandt is awesome. So if you are a student of that program, you are very, very lucky to be in that program. And you have a wonderful program director. That was a great honor for me, and I consider it a privilege to have gotten to know Dr. Michael Lou Brandt better during that time and witness his devotion in turning out ready and able funeral directors to the profession. I'm also a friend of the founder of Send Off Funerals Reimagined, Kelly Roberts. Kelly is passionate about this business. We sat and visited about the possibilities and potential of it. I'm excited to see that when I look at the current obituary pages, the idea seems to be resonating and growth is happening and will eventually happen even faster as the company reaches a certain threshold of business. And we see a lot of businesses like that popping up. Over here in Dallas, we got a guy by the name of Joseph Demerly Bell. He opened up a company called Bespoke Undertakings. And he brings a level of concierge boutique funeral directing to his clients. Find him on LinkedIn. Learn more about his business. It's very, very similar to what we're seeing here. When I think of Send Off and other businesses like Natural Organic Reduction and later Leader Recompose, I do see the methods of death care and choice of consumers in a paradigm of change. And while we don't know if that paradigm will continue or how fast it will continue, the one aspect that remains the same is the same compassion that has been a funeral director's calling card for over a century and will remain into the future. Absolutely. Absolutely. So once again, thank you, Tom Anderson of the Funeral Director Daily. Great source of information. I will also throw out another shout out to Memorial Business Journal. So the Memorial Business Journal is published by the National Funeral Directors Association. And I got my copy this morning delivered via email. It is for members only. So being a little bit hesitant about posting something you can only get via for pay as being a paying member of the NFDA. But what I will say is the headline article in today's edition of the Memorial Business Journal is by Mike Nicodemus, who is probably one of the leading authorities in cremation and cremation training in the United States. I was lucky enough to go through a training with Mike Nicodemus back when the Cremation Association of North America was the only trick in town that offered something like that. So he's been doing this a long, long time. And that article is pure gold for anyone in cremation. But what's really crazy to me is that, once again, this is stuff we've been teaching people in school for years. This was in effect when I was in mortuary school, and it sure as heck hasn't changed. The necessity of having proper authorization for cremation, having a good cremation authorization. So there's the little red book, Mortuary Law, by Gilligan, that's published by the Cincinnati Foundation. And shout out to my friends over at the Cincinnati Institute of Funeral Service there. And that book was last published in 2011. And there's an entire chapter on cremation and a proper cremation authorization. So you got to ask yourself, how are you still screwing up handing out things when we have been teaching this for almost 20 years, easy, what your cremation authorization should look like and how you should be handling it? The only thing that I am convinced of is after we teach you what you should be doing to protect yourself and your business, you decide that, well, that's not the way the funeral home does it, so I don't have to do it that way. And then you learn the hard way at your first actual litigation that you probably should have been doing it the way you were taught in school. So what I will say is, don't believe me. Don't believe Mr. Gilligan, who was the general counsel for the National Funeral Directors Association. But please believe Mike Nicodemus, who has been doing this for a very, very long time, easily 40 years. And he says his cremation authorization is 7 pages long. And I believe it. I absolutely believe it. And it must be a doozy of a cremation authorization. Absolutely has to be a doozy. Next article. Next article up for talk. Undertaker crushed to death by lift in UK funeral home horror. Brought to us by The Mirror UK. A woman died at a funeral parlor after being crushed to death by a lift used to move the deceased. Sally Blundell, 58, was pronounced dead at the East of England Co-op Funeral Services branch in Swaffham, Norfolk on December 1st. A full inquest into her death, which opened at Norfolk Coroner's Court today, heard that the funeral administrator had been due to hold a family viewing that morning, but got trapped within a mechanism of a hydraulic pump lift. Stephen Kemp, who was employed at the Dereham branch, contacted the emergency services the inquest heard. Police Constable Luke Heffer arrived and entered the chapel of rest to a rear room within the funeral home. He told the inquest that there was a substantial refrigeration unit in the room and a scissor lift that was used to lift caskets in and out of the fridge. He reported that Ms. Blundell was found trapped in the scissor lift, positioned across a bar with the upper portion of her body within the framework. Norfolk area coroner Yvonne Blake confirmed Ms. Blundell's medical cause of death was recorded as contusion and compression of the chest by an external object. Dawn Salisbury, who had arranged to visit a deceased relative, grew worried when no personnel were present at the funeral home for her 11 a.m. appointment. So problem number one, you really don't want to have people by themselves at funeral homes if you can all prevent it. In a statement read to the Norwich Inquest, she explained that after 10 minutes, I decided to ring the landline number for the branch. When she was unable to hear a phone ringing within the branch, she attempted to call the celebrant she had been liaising with, and a message was relayed to another branch. Mr. Kemp, a funeral manager at the Dereham branch of East of England Co-op Funeral Services, told the inquest he had requested security to remotely access CCTV cameras at the Swaffham branch. He said they could only see 2 women sat in the reception area for their 11 a.m. appointment, as well as Ms. Blundell's car in the car park, but there was no trace of Ms. Blundell. The inquest heard there were no CCTV cameras within sensitive areas of the funeral home where bodies are kept, and that is quite common at funeral homes in the United States. We do not put cameras up in the prep room. We do not put cameras up in the morgue. Generally, there will be a camera outside facing the morgue, but not in the morgue itself. Mr. Kemp visited the Swaffham branch and found Liz Blundell deceased, the court heard. In a statement, he disclosed that a hydraulic hoist had come down on her body and was crushing her over the chest area. He said, "It was apparent to me she was already dead." Ms. Blundell's daughter, Lucy Blundell, stated, "I understand she had raised concerns about lone working."
This is some bullshit.
She mentioned that her mother from Great Cressingham was respected by her colleagues and had a wide network of friends. The coroner noted that Ms. Blundell was seen on CCTV in the branch at 9:46 a.m. on December 1st, walking away after receiving a call on her work mobile phone. Mr. Kemp is observed arriving at the branch just after noon when he discovered Ms. Blundell. After Ms. Blundell's death, a co-op spokesman said the company was deeply saddened by the tragic accident. First and foremost in our mind are the family and friends of our colleague, he said. We offer them our deepest condolences and ask that their privacy is respected at this time. The inquest being conducted with a jury continues. So, the problem is, you really need to have a respect for the heavy-duty equipment that we use in funeral service. Most of those things do not have some type of emergency cutoff whereby if it feels a pressure it shouldn't, it stops. So in this case, and I don't know what type of scissor lift this was or how it was being used, but you never put yourself between something that moves and an immovable object, like a wall or a ceiling or a floor, especially if you don't have someone around. It is always best to wait for help. Now, if your operational model is, that's just tough crap, figure it out, move it by yourself, it's kind of a problem. Okay, that is really kind of a problem. Way, way back in the day, Professor Finn used to work for Best Buy. Go Team Blue. And Best Buy has a device called the Big Joe. It is essentially a one-man forklift. And we used it for stocking above shelves. We used it for moving, back in the day, those huge projection TVs, all sorts of stuff. So here's the thing. The Big Joe did not have a sensor for things that are under it. What ended up happening is one day a small child ran under the Big Joe while someone was trying to move something without a spotter. That person came down and crushed that kid to death. And so thereafter, you could not operate the Big Joe without someone working with you. Always respect your industrial equipment. And at the mortuary school, at mortuaries, you have all sorts of power lifts. Be very, very careful when using that type of equipment. Time for another hit from the Lucky Glass. For those of you coming in a little bit late, I went through the giveaways of what I'm going to have at the table over at the American Board. And I'm going to have some little skull cookies in white and bone colored. Going to have the full-size articulated skull that I had last year. This year you're going to have to clean it yourself because I'm not going to do that for you, but that should also help protect it for transport. Going to have a little cell phone holder so that you don't have to rest the cell phone with your pinky and hurt your pinky. And I'm going to have plenty of fidget dumpster fires. So if you want one of those, make sure that if you are at the American Board Conference that you get to that Mortifin table as soon as it opens, because I'm not going to print 60 of these for everyone. I have a little handful of whatever, so feel free to grab. If you want something set aside, feel free to drop me a DM on Facebook or shoot an email to askbigbadfinn@gmail.com, and I'll do what I can to make sure that you got a little something with your name on it so that you don't have to worry. Professor Beckham says, many years ago when I was working manufacturing plant, whenever we used certain equipment, we had a spotter. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So this next part is something new. Again, I am at least visiting certain groups on Facebook now. And if I see something I want to bring up during a live stream, I'll make a note of it, take a screenshot of it, something like that. Now, I am not going to post the actual posts from Facebook because people posted it, didn't think someone might live read it. But I did copy the texts. And so for those individuals out there who might be a little bit hard of sight, I want to make sure that I do have text on the screen. So give me just a second while I paginate this a little bit better. And just put one per page here. Go. Melanie, what's your biggest advice for the NBE? You know what? I am so sorry, Melanie. You sent me an email. I read it. I left it unread so I would respond to it, and I never got around to responding to it. And if I recall, you were inquiring, do I have any videos on merchandising? And I don't believe I have any merchandising videos up yet, but it is my intention to try to get my... I got this like 200 slide presentation that I used when I was teaching that covers everything about caskets. And I want to try to record that. Problem is it's 200 slides, and that's like 2.5 hours of my life. And it is really hard for me to find 2.5 hours to record that. So I promise you I will get that up before I leave one way or another. So before I get into those questions, we'll answer your question. What's your biggest advice for the MBE? I'm taking my exams April 20 and 21st. Okay, then I'm going to get that damn video up this weekend. I love your struggle with business law. Okay, so the first thing is making yourself sick over the exam is not going to help you. This comes from a person that wanted to puke before he went in for his first board exam. And I started with the arts, because my professors told me do the arts first, then do the sciences. And that's exactly what I did. I scheduled my exams 2 weeks apart, did the arts, did the sciences. I actually brought a flask of whiskey with me, and I took a shot before I went in. And I can't tell you that that actually helped me, but my mindset when I walked in was basically, F it, let's go do this. Like me sitting here working myself about making myself sick about it, not going to be helpful. So as you're getting closer to that date, try to keep the sense of urgency out of your head. It's going to cause more harm than good. Just study, maintain discipline, you'll be fine. Get there early. Get there early. I got to my board exam 2 hours prior to my appointment. I had to drive an hour and a half to get there. It was important for me to do that because Florida traffic, I don't want to deal with road rage and crap like that. I want to get there. I want to be able to calm myself down, ground myself out before I walk in. So I'm going to say get there early. Probably not the type of advice you're looking for yet, but I'm telling you, there's a reason why professors throughout the U.S. say this sort of stuff to all their students. We mean it, and I lived it. Now, with business law, a really important thing about the board exam. I used to say that the NBE study guide was useless. It is not useless. If used appropriately, it is very, very good for you. And the most important part, I feel, is the breakdown of the exam in the study guide. I also think that's available for free on their website. They tell you exactly what domains are and how many questions come from each domain. So the big thing is, business law is not that big of a domain. The tasks associated with business law, even though it looks like a lot, oh, I got to know uniform commercial code, and I got to know this, and I got to know that, and I got to know this, and I got to know that. Dude, there's only like 13 questions coming from that. And that may encompass other areas. Do you really want to make yourself sick over 13 questions? Truck through it. Watch the videos. I got videos on business law up there. Like, really, really just bare bones. Here's what you might need to know about business law. So be very careful that you are not spending lots and lots and lots of time studying a section that only has 13 questions, when, say, another section might have 25 questions coming from it. That's double the information you need to know for that section. So when you're scheduling what you're reading and how you're preparing, do exactly that. Make sure you're spending double the time on the stuff that will have double the questions. A lot of people are like, man, I don't know business law. I got to focus on that. And they spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours studying on an 8-hour session on 13 questions. Don't do that. That works against you. Okay, that works against you. Depending on where you went to school, how many quote unquote friends you made while you were there. Study buddies go a long way. There are groups on Facebook that will be like, hey, looking for a study buddy for the NBE. I'm very skeptical about things like that. Our good education have. I really preferred, when I was a professor, to have mechanisms within like the learning management systems like Canvas, Blackboard, stuff like that. So you'd have to log into your student portal. You'd work with people that were in your school. But if you are going to work with outside individuals, recommend some type of device where you're not sharing personal information. So try to get like a work Zoom or something like that. Whereas you can all meet in a central location, maybe like Google Meet. We use Microsoft Teams at Pierce colleges, and I could never remember any of the Google stuff because I have like very little experience playing with it. So that would be something that I recommend. I mean, hell, you got a question, you can always email me, and promise if it's like a question, like a subject matter question, I'll get you a response to that because that doesn't require me actually recording a video. So that's a thing. Don't be afraid to reach out to your former professors. Like, the American Board looks at pass rates for NBE test takers. We in education have a vested interest in wanting you to pass. And if something's not clicking, something's not working, pick up the phone and call your old professor. Remember, they're your professor, they're a licensed peer, they're part of your network. I am forever blessed with the professors I had in mortuary school. Gary Brown, Kevin Davis. I still talk with both of them. Professor Davis just retired, and I had the privilege of presenting him his Educator of the Year. I never utilized them as an NBE study thing, but I had a study buddy. My study buddy, Tom, I still converse with him now and then on Facebook. He got me through mortuary school. And we also had a little group that we studied with together that we, at St. Pete College, I was part of an online program too. We had our labs on campuses we had to attend. So at Pierce Colleges, we bring you in for a competency clinical. At St. Pete College, where I went, you had to go, plus you had to get outside embalming as well. So I got to see my professors once a week. I got to see my classmates once a week. We utilized that because we all wanted to get licensed. We all had a focus of getting this done and wanting to do this. So I know there's people that are doing this because, oh, it's insta-cool. Oh my God, I'm going to be able to create content too. Haha, what a great idea. Where is it? There it is. So probably really important that you study with people that want to succeed like you do. 35 questions on all legal, business and funeral law, and regulatory issues, the conference study guide. Okay, so really important thing there. I know that you folks don't really get task level data, okay? Like how many questions come from where, and I can't disclose that, okay? That's proprietary to the conference. They share some of that with us, so we have an idea of significance. But what I will say is it is far more important for you as a professional to know regulations than it is for you to be able to give me the difference between trespass to chattels and embezzlement. Okay? Remember, this is a board exam. Funeral directors are telling the conference, here are the important things that our people need to do. It is really important for funeral directors to understand and comply with the Federal Trade Commission funeral rule, hazard communication, etc., etc., etc. It is probably less important that they remember the intricacies of the Uniform Commercial Code. But just going into it, you should probably know that, you know, and mind you, these are not, anything I give you is not a question on the exam. It's simply, I want to try to get you in the right train of thought. You should know by this point that if you have two merchants working together on a transaction, the rules are different from a merchant versus a consumer. Very general principles. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time worrying about every little thing you see in like the UCC or something like that. Read through it once and then, but spend most of your time hammering on the stuff that actually impacts the business. FTC, EPA stuff, OSHA, etc., etc., etc. Professor Beckham says, my students call and email me often. Yeah. Now, they would love to know, hey, you know, what's on the exam? We don't know what's on the exam, unfortunately. I tell them to call, yeah, okay, I appreciate that, Pastor Beckham. Just because of you, I'm going to get a 900 number. You give them that number. They can call me, okay? The study group is a great resource. I push that to our students. I think law is the second biggest section of the arts. And, you know what? Give me just a second. I'm actually going to pop up my my old PDF version of the of the study guide, because I want to say that it's not law. It's called regulatory compliance. So where the heck is that study guide? National Board Exams. Okay. So I'm not going to put it on the screen. I've got a video that talks about, I think this very version, an older version of it, and how to use it to guide your... Yeah, it's legal and regulatory compliance. So I don't know how many questions come from it right now. In 2023, legal and regulatory had 35 questions. And I know since then they have gone through an exam rewrite. So if it's down to 25, then it's down to 25. It's quote unquote less important than it was. Where is it? Come on. Counseling. Okay, legal and regulatory compliance. Mortuary law, probate law, compliance with OSHA regulatory standards, compliance with Federal Trade Commission, pre-need, final disposition law. Again, if I was studying for the exam again, I would probably put the brunt of my studies on the stuff that actually relates to funeral service in as much as, direct impact. So in the study guide, it gives you a content outline. It also gives you, I think there was a section for professional expectations. There used to be one for professional expectations. Oh, that was what I was looking, professional expectations, okay. So I will look at the content outline, comply with applicable funeral service laws. One, you know that's not going to be a state-level law. That's immediately out because the National Board Exam tests general principles, large thing. Comply with applicable business laws. I'd read through it now and then, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. That's me personally. Comply with applicable regulations. I would spend a lot of time looking at OSHA, stuff of that nature. Especially things that might double dip, okay? So if I'm studying for arts and sciences, I know that I should probably hammer OSHA because you can ask a question about the formaldehyde rule and it's just as relevant on regulatory compliance as it might be in embalming. So that would be something that I would spend time on because I know I'm double dipping in both sections. Obtain barrel disposition permits. Well, nothing like that's going to be in general business law. Explain mandatory disclosures. Again, FTC. Comply with FTC general price list requirements, statement of goods, FTC outer burial container and casket price list. Comply with OSHA. Retain documents required by OSHA. Again, go into your study guide and look at how much of legal and regulatory compliance has to do with funeral service. Has very little to do with the other stuff. Comply with applicable business laws is number 2 on the version that I'm looking at. And then from 3 basically on, I don't see a heck of a lot of business law in there. I don't see a heck of a lot of business law at all. So if I was studying for the arts exam, and let's say that I had 1 hour to study at 60 minutes, I might look at 1 or 2 general concepts in business law. So I might look at, let's say, torts. Torts is rather large, so that might be the only thing I look at for 10 or 15 minutes. And the next 45, I'm spending looking at funeral service stuff, either FTC, OSHA, or stuff out of the mortuary law book. Next day, I got an hour. Maybe I look at bailments. I look at types of contracts. 10, 15 minutes. The next 45 minutes, I spend, again, looking at the stuff that's going to be the majority of the content outline. That's the way that I would prepare for it. So the content outlines are actually very useful because I absolutely promise you that you're not going to walk into a board exam and they're going to give you, like, of the 25 or 35 questions, 18 questions on torts. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen that way. Don't spend all of your time studying like that would be the situation. So go back and take a look at those content outlines if you have the study guide. And then scale it down. Maybe between now and then, 1 business law topic for every study session, but the majority spent somewhere else. What I see is a lot of people, like when they're studying for the sciences, they don't really understand chemistry. They spend a lot of time studying on chemistry. Chemistry, general chemistry, is in the funeral service sciences section now. I forget how many questions are in funeral service sciences. Let me drag this thing back up here. But it's not a lot compared to embalming. It's not a lot as compared to... okay. 26 questions in funeral service. In the 2023 version of the exam, funeral service sciences had 26 questions. Embalming had 62. You are doing yourself a disservice if you are studying chemistry as much as you are studying embalming. You're not going to get that many chemistry questions. By chemistry, I mean straight chemistry, atoms, compounds, stuff of that nature. Now, embalming chemistry, the types of chemicals, how those chemicals are used, different story. That's important. But also a lot of that's in the embalming book. So I might spend 5 to 10 minutes looking at a chemistry subject, 5 to 10 minutes looking at a pathology subject, 5 or 10 minutes looking at a microbiology subject, 5 or 10 minutes looking at an anatomy subject. The rest of my time I'm spending in embalming and restorative art. Why? Because that's where the majority of the questions are. 100% of the time. Being able to relate diseases to symptoms in their embalming solutions, that's all of embalming. Now, I've got all the embalming videos up for the 6th edition. And I say time and time again, yo, there's only 3 ways that you approach any complication. Multi-point injection or restricted cervical. Multi-point, higher concentrations or waterless. And there's a third one that is escaping my mind because I'm old and I'm getting senile. There are literal, what's the saying? To a hammer, the entire world looks like a nail. When it comes to a complicated case, an embalming complicated case, there's only 3 types of nails that you can possibly hammer with. That's it. So drawing that association really simplifies things, because then you're not trying to say, okay, well, if I have swelling in a leg, here's how I take care of swelling in a leg. No, this is how I take care of swelling anywhere. And if I've got swelling in a leg, that doesn't mean I have to inject the entire body within a solution to reduce swelling. I need to inject the leg with the solution that has to do with swelling. So if they ask me a question about what should I inject the body with, least stringent embalming chemical to get the job done, minimum 2% solution, etc. For the leg, you might go in waterless with Intrafiant, the exact opposite, because it's swollen. And instant tissue fixation works on limbs too. So you're trying to freeze it, you freeze it with instant tissue fixation. So I mentioned those things in my videos for a reason. Because when I was in mortuary school, I was trying to memorize the disease, the causative agent of the disease itself, the symptoms of the disease, and the very specific thing the book said about how I fix that. And then as I was teaching, I realized, well, damn. Pretty much for every complication, it's nothing but higher than normal averages. That was the third one. So higher indexes, greater than 2%, 3% on up, solutions in multi-point injections. That's it. Promise you. You look at any complication in the book, it is solved by changing the type of chemical you're using, higher, lower index, right? So complication, if you have dehydration, you obviously don't want to hit it with higher than, higher averages or higher indexes. But virtually everything else, it's higher index, stronger concentrations, multi-point injection. Could you do multi-point with dehydration? Situation calls for it. Certainly would be multi-point if you have dehydration in one place and normal in another, because maybe you don't want to put the humectant in the rest of the body, but you want to put the humectant in the arm because you need to remoisturize that. No, those are the type of things that they might be looking for in a question. And the textbook says exactly that. And it's been saying that since the 80s when Robert Mayer first came out with that edition. I still haven't had the time to read through the Champion textbook that was last published, I think, in 1999. But for the most part, no one's looking at that even as a reference anymore. So there's great information in that embalming book. And great practical information, not just academic. So again, if you haven't watched some of those videos, take the 45 minutes to listen to one of them. Some of those videos are long, like an hour or something, so I apologize for that. But I don't like doing these little 5-minute snippet videos and have 500 videos out there. If I wanted to build a channel and make you come back and want for more, okay, fine. I'd rather just give you the whole dang lecture and it's there. And then if you need to pause it, YouTube does this really cool thing where it saves where you were so you can go back and start the video from the next point. So again, if you need something, you have a direct question, you could always shoot me an email. All right. So we'll leave that in the chat there. If anything else pops up, I'll address it. But I want to look at some of these questions I saw on Facebook. So, you know what? Let me get to the ones on the phone first. Whoopsies. Hi there. So, first one that I found that I screenshot has to do with an embalming situation. 63 years old, died from who knows what. Intubated, heart tube, med ports all over the place, stomach drainage tube, been 18 hours after death and refrigerated at a hospital. So it's still fairly fresh. At least by my old lab standards, 18 hours is still pretty fresh. Went into carotid, practically zero drainage from jugular. Just a little gluck. Tried 6 point nothing, few drops like sludge, suggestions, and go. I've got primarily Dodge injectables. We teach you this in embalming school. Hello, as I break my stuff. Okay? If you don't get drainage and you are injecting, the only time you have to care if you're not getting drainage is if your body is swelling. If I was to ask you right now, Melanie, hey, how much moisture, where is the majority of moisture located after death by the time we're probably embalming it? Hopefully within like at least 10 to 15 seconds, you could probably say in the capillaries. Like 85% of all moisture is located in the capillaries, which is why when we start injecting, we don't get immediate drainage. At least you shouldn't. Because if you are, what are you getting? Short-circuiting. Short-circuiting. So we teach you that when you start injecting, if you see evidence of distribution and diffusion, you see the dye doing its job, you see a loss of elasticity, all of that, but you're not getting drainage? Oh, effing well, dude. Nothing to worry about here. So if you're doing a multi-point, you're not getting any drainage, nothing swelling and it's embalming, you just keep right on trucking. Now, if you're injecting and something starts to swell immediately, you stop what you're doing. Because now it is going to be a multi-point or at least a restricted cervical depending on where you're injecting. If you are injecting and you notice that the abdomen is increasing, well, that's kind of a problem. And if I ask you, why is that a problem? You should be able to tell me pretty quickly, because there's probably an aneurysm rupture down there. It's filling for only one of two reasons. Either there's a hole and the fluid is going into the abdominal space, or you're injecting too fast, and that pressure is causing the abdomen to swell. Both of those are bad, but for different reasons. If it's a hole, multi-point injection is the only way you're going to be able to embalm the body, either a 6-point or a 12-point. If it's gas, you might be able to reduce the rate of flow. Maybe play with your pressure a little bit. Safest bet would be to do something up here and then do something down there. Raise the neck, raise the leg, even if you don't like doing, multi-points. Safest way to do it. Go past the guts, inject the legs. And then when you're in one of the femorals, reverse it and shoot it the other way. If that abdomen's going to give you some garbage, it'll shoot into the other leg at least because the abdomen is pushing down, closing off the upper torso, so the other leg should at least embalm. I used to solely inject via the neck. That is the way my preceptor trained me. That is the way it was beaten into my head. Then I had one guy come in, guy by the name of Mike Hook. He used to own a funeral home down the street from Reese Funeral Home, where I started working, where I was a director later. And Mr. Reese bought that funeral home from him. And Mike only ever injected via the leg, and I never really understood it. Because jugular is the best place to drain, and everyone swears by the jugular. But what Mike said was, listen, if you start in the leg and you inject towards the head gets embalmed symmetrically. But if you inject up here and then you have to shoot it, you might have one side get more than the other complications. But if you're injecting via the leg and you have a problem with the head, well, guess what? You were going to need to inject the head separately anyways. So when I started teaching, I was still doing a lot of neck embalming, almost exclusively neck embalming. And the last 3 or 4 years that I was there, I only ever injected via the femoral artery. I'd have my students all raise their arteries, but I'd always start with the leg. Why? Because if I don't have to inject the head separately, I don't have to inject the head separately. And what's the really cool part when you're in an academic setting and you raise all the arteries anyways? When you start injecting, you're going to watch that artery swell right up. And that tells you it's going into the head, so you know immediately whether it's working or not. And then you're already there to take drainage because you have the neck open. So everyone can do whatever they want in their prep rooms. 100%. You do what you're good at. You do what you're comfortable with. But I really like doing split injections. And I would inject at the femoral, and I would drain via the right jugular vein. That was the way I just did it. So, once again, when people say, oh, you know, great, you learned that in school, now we're going to really teach you how to do it. The book told you that in mortuary school. If you inject and you don't get swelling, but you get everything else, to be expected. And even if it starts building in the abdomen, monitor it. Monitor and see what's going on. Because you're going to drain that when you trocar. So once again, education proves that we are giving you actual life skills on how to do things. 100%. So this is one that I copy-pasted. We'll get to that one. So this individual posted this question. Some funeral homes hire people that are not funeral directors and or embalmers. That's a great way to find yourself on the receiving end of a disciplinary action.
Who does that?
I've seen them with different titles: family service, sales advisors, sales associates, etc. They get an insurance license, which is simple, and sell pre-need funerals. Okay. I've got a family friend that's my little brother. I'm the godfather to his child. He has 2 insurance licenses. I know countless pre-need counselors in the state of Florida, many of which earned their insurance license as they got into the business. So they weren't previously insured. They came in, they wanted to be pre-need counselors, then had to earn an insurance license. I have never heard a person tell me that getting an insurance license is easy. Now, I understand in some states, a pre-need counselor can be an unlicensed person as long as they sell through trusts. Most of those states also require that person to be a funeral director. So I don't know too many places that if you are a pre-need specialist that you are basically not an insurance salesperson, an insurance agent. And to say that getting an insurance license is easy, I'll take your word for it, but I don't believe that for a second. These people then downgrade funeral directors because the funeral directors have never done what they are doing. What is everyone's thoughts on this? One, they are not part of the cool kid club. So any insurance pre-need guy that is downgrading funeral directors, the guy that's in charge of the funeral home you're selling for has a funeral director license. You're looking to get your ass fired. So I'm just going to say that's crap. Now, the big problem that I have is these pre-need sales folks who are insurance agents, who aren't funeral directors, have literally no idea on how to arrange a damn funeral. And worse yet, their pre-need training does not make them shadow a funeral director to learn about the things that we talk about and do, because as a pre-need specialist, you don't have to learn about funeral directing. You don't have to go to mortuary school. You don't have to take a funeral directing class or an arranging class. Which is why I strongly suggest that funeral homes take note, send your people to arranger training as pre-need specialists so they can at least learn some of those skills. Especially the never done it before types. All too often, they write a funeral or they make a promise that they shouldn't be making promises for. Well, the pre-need counselor told me that I could have a church service on a Sunday at a Catholic church. If you are having a funeral on a Sunday in a Catholic church, it's because you're probably in a first name with the local bishop. That is extraordinarily rare in most Catholic jurisdictions anywhere. So I find the exact opposite to be true. The pre-need folk usually create problems for the funeral directors because they just simply don't know better. And if they do know better and they're still doing it to cause problems, you really need to get rid of them. Okay? They are a liability to your funeral home. So even if they produce, it takes 1 or 2 good lawsuits to undo all that production. Funeral home owners, managers, I need advice. I'm at the very end of mortuary school, and the only thing between me and graduation is a 200-hour practicum this May. A lot of schools have practicums. They are also very clear that practicum exists, and you need to get ready for it. So this is why your professors generally want you to introduce yourself to local professionals in your area, so that well before you get there, you're getting your foot in the door for those 200 hours. It requires time inside a funeral home and the opportunity to sit in on and assist with arrangements. American board standards say that you have to at least sit in on it, even if you don't assist. So, just so we're clear, the standard itself says that you need to participate and observe arrangements in either an actual or simulated setting, and you have to prepare documents. Well, whether or not you need to do that for that family, you can prepare them under the auspices of the funeral director on a simulation basis. I have 5 years of hands-on experience in this profession, currently hold an embalming apprentice license. Okay? So I don't know what state you're in, but if you hold an embalming apprentice license, you should have an in with a funeral home. I've done removals, worked in prep, and supported families in every way I can outside of making arrangements. Okay? Today I visited funeral homes across multiple counties with my resume in hand and spoke directly with directors, about 20 of them. I explained my situation, made clear I'm willing to work in any capacity. I would generally love to find a place to stay on long term, but I understand many locations are fully staffed. Okay, so you're not looking for practicum, you're looking for a job. Practicum is not a job. Okay, practicum is not a job. Practicum is you need 200 hours sitting in a funeral home watching what we do. So if you're looking to get compensated while you're doing that, that's part of the problem. Now, I also understand that there are funeral homes, and a lot of them, especially corporates, who will not let you do anything like this unless you are an employee of the funeral home. There's some creative ways to get around this. Okay? So step 1, look for that part-time attendant job. If you need me as an attendant, call me if needed. However, for free, now that I'm an employee and on your payroll, may I just sit in and observe for my funeral school practicum. You are now an employee. You should not be doing any employee tasks while you're doing your practicum work. Might be a way to get in the door with that. At this point, what I truly need is the opportunity to complete my practicum. It is unpaid, and I'm willing to show up, learn, and do the work required to finish what I've started. I was told no more times than I can count. And I hate to say this, that's not surprising to me. People running funeral homes, managers, owners, I don't get why they don't understand that that's not doing them any favors. They need help. They're hurting for licensed help. You're the one getting the license. You would think something would click there, but for some reason it doesn't. So I'm asking directly, does mentioning this practicum make this a non-starter? It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. In fact, they should be grateful because, hey, if you work out, they have a line on a future employee if they want to use it. And if your market is flooded, I'm sorry to hear that. That's not most markets. Maybe you've got a friend or a family member in a market where there's a funeral home that would be happy to have you for, a couple of weekends to get the 200 hours. I'm not going to say it's fun, but like, if you can go somewhere and do 2 12-hour days on a weekend, it sucks. That's 24 hours. 10 weekends, you're done. If you could do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 hours, that's 30 hours per weekend. So do what you can is the best I can tell you. If there was something I could be approaching differently, I would truly appreciate the guys trying to complete this final requirement and move forward in the profession. And I wish you the best of luck to do it, man. Like, I really do. Because I do not understand the allergy that some firms have, independent and corporate, where, oh, we just can't, we can't do practicums here. Or we can't hire you unless you have experience. Well, how the hell am I supposed to get the experience? Like, it's nuts to me. So my best bet is, dude, just bring me on as a part-time attendant. May I come in just to observe? Can I just sit in the lobby and literally observe? And if arrangement is, boom. One thing I don't understand is because, like, families don't want that. Stop making the decision for the family. Ask the family. And I can tell you, every single time that I got a call from my alma mater that said, hey, I need a student who needs to get some contact hours for practicum. You got it. Let me make a phone call you right back. Hey, Mrs. Smith, it's Joe over at the funeral home. I just got a call from the mortuary school that I went to. It's just down the street from our funeral home. And there's a student that needs to get some contact hours, some observation. And I just wanted to let you know that I would like the student to shadow me as we're holding your husband's funeral. Do you have any objection to that? Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith. I can tell you that I appreciate it, and the student really appreciates the opportunity. Again, they will not be assisting in the services. They're just going to be observing, but I want you to make sure you understand why someone there might not recognize, it might be a stranger, so that at least you're aware of it. Done. And I can, yeah, Melanie, 9 times out of 10, I'm telling you, man, with me, maybe it's just me, maybe it was my cologne, 10 out of 10. I never had I never had a family tell me no, ever. In fact, they were always very, very happy with it. They thought it was great that that funeral could be used to help someone learn more about the industry. Now, also had way more positive comments than negative comments as a funeral director, which might have something to do with it. So, who knows? Okay? But funeral, you hurt the industry if you don't let these folks in for practicum, especially if they're not looking to get paid for it. I'm looking for some real-world input from other funeral directors on a situation I'm currently dealing with. I have a decedent who's been embalmed in our cooler for about 60 days now. Ooh, boy. You know what's really scary? When I was in the lab in Miami, that was pretty common. We get bodies 45 days, 90 days after death, indigents, no one ever claimed them, just sitting at a hospital. It's crazy. There are 3 equal next of kin, nephews, and I've spoken with all of them multiple times. Everyone is aware, but no one is stepping up to pay. Their religion is against cremation. Been there, done that. Okay? One nephew keeps saying he's waiting on reimbursement from a nursing home. For what? Nursing home's not going to reimburse him for something. I call BS on that. If you would know why a nursing home is reimbursing a family member, drop that into the comments. I would love to know a reason why that happens, because I can't think of a single one. But again, I am not the brightest crayon in the box. One nephew said he will call with a credit card but never followed through. Yeah, just trying to get you off the phone. Another told me he has no money to contribute. This sounds like an indigent case, and you should probably look into what social services is like in your area. There was an estate attorney involved and made it clear we're not moving forward with the death certificate until payment is arranged. Okay, well, that's stupid. I'm flat out telling you that's stupid. Because the estate attorney can't even do anything without a death certificate. So if you want to at least get paid by the attorney, they're going to need a death certificate. And above all else, depending on your jurisdiction, like if you're in the state of Florida, you're breaking the law. You are under an obligation to get that death certificate filed. Now, you don't have to buy the death certificates for them. You don't have to outlay money on their behalf. But you got to get it registered. That's your obligation under the laws of your jurisdiction if you look it up. I'm fairly certain you're going to find that to be the truth. She's trying to help, but we're getting nowhere. To add to it, the decedent does have assets, so she won't qualify for state assistance or an indigent burial. and the family already owns a burial lot. We're not willing to absorb the cost of services like this, and that's fine. We've done that in the past, but can no longer assist in that way. Okay? Has anyone dealt with something similar with multiple next of kin and no one taking financial responsibility? How did you handle it, and what would your next step be? So, in my area, we would contact indigent services. 100%. Body's been abandoned. So your problem is the body has not been abandoned. There are assets and there is attorney involved. So here's what you do. At least this is what I would do in your stead. File that damn death certificate already. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to launch a claim against the estate. You're not going to dispose of the body. You're going to launch a claim against the estate. If the state wants you to dispose of the body, bury it, cremate it, whatever it's going to, the state will come at you with some order of compulsion, at which point you can point to the order and say, I now had to do this. Okay? And if the state is going to compel you to dispose of the body, say via cremation, the state can sign the cremation authorization. And if the state does that, the family can sue the state. And they're going to have a really hard time actually winning something like that because the state is given deference when it comes to things like this. So what you do is you write up the bill, whatever they want, and then you're going to charge them your storage fee for every day you've been holding it. The bill's going to come to like $64,000, right? The bill's going to be astronomical. It's going to be insane. The first thing is, you can. You can send a notice to the attorney. You can send a notice to the family. You send it to everyone saying, we have held this body for 60 days without charge. Starting, today is March 27th, right? So starting April 1st, we're going to start assessing a storage charge. This is on our general price list, which was presented to you at the time of the arrangements. So in addition to the services you have selected, we will also add whatever your storage fee is, $100, $50, $300 per day until the body is disposed of and we receive payment. Now, are you going to get that? No way in hell you're going to get that. But the fun part is you're able to launch that claim against the estate, and the judge can take that into factor. Remember, in mortuary school we teach you that there is a certain dollar amount that is privileged, where you will get paid, and generally your state will cap it at a certain dollar amount, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is. You know if there are liquid assets in that estate, they're at least going to get $5,000. Well, if you assess them a $64,000 bill, you're not going to get $64,000, but you're probably going to get your full $5,000. Period. Based on what you're saying here, that is all you can do. Assess a storage fee, unless the state is going to compel you and order you to dispose of the body in whatever fashion. At which point, the state should also say that you can bill the family or something else. If I was the funeral home owner in this case, I would probably try to find an attorney skilled in this area of law, in the jurisdiction in which you live, and your business operates, to get legal advice from that lawyer. If you don't have a specialist, you might want to reach out to a law firm in Florida called Weiner Law Firm. Wendy Weiner is the attorney that runs that law firm. She has substantial experience in cases like in death care. So she might have someone that she can refer to you. And generally, these folks ain't cheap. But at least you would get an actual idea of what your legal rights are and what actions you could take, and you could use that going forward. I do not want to go to the Board of Health to have them authorize the cremation, as it indemnifies the Board of Health, but it does not indemnify the funeral home. I don't see how that works at all. If the Board of Health is ordering you to cremate the body, That's the de facto indemnification. You're being ordered by a governmental body to do something, and you can't tell the government no. One of the nephews is very aggressive and has already brought up that he has lawyers on retainers. Yeah, and you know what? I've got Mahatma Gandhi and Donald Trump backing me up on mine. Like, come on, okay? He's got all these money for retainers, but no money to pay for a funeral. I call crap, okay? And that's what it is intimidation. 100% that's intimidation. Now, he very well could have lawyers on retainers. 100%. He's making an actual correct statement. But I call BS on something like that. Because I've had attorneys call me and intimidate me to try to get something for a buddy of theirs, a client for them or something like that. And I love it when they do that because I'll ask them, I'm sorry, what was your name again and what law firm? And when they repeat it, I'm already Googling it and I'm pulling them up. Why am I doing that? Because I want to see what area of law they actually practice. 9 times out of 10, they're personal injury lawyers. They've taken, $1,000 from someone to sit there, give you a call to put the fear of God into you because they've read a statute and they've said, and they have what they think is actually the law, but they actually don't understand the law because they don't practice that area of law. So when someone says, I've got lawyers, okay, so do I. They can share emails at $500 a letter. Cool. So the best thing to do is either go to an attorney and get your own letter of what to send, contact the person that I've recommended, so that they can maybe refer you to someone that is skilled in that area. But I don't understand how in your area, if you are ordered by the Board of Health to cremate a body, that you're not indemnified by that. Like, the government has now usurped their right of disposition, which is very well codified in the law. We teach you that in mortuary school. If you fail to dispose, if you have the paramount right of disposition, and you fail to exercise the right, it is well established that the government can step in under the auspices of public health and sanitation, order the disposition of that body, and that's it. You don't get to keep the right of disposition infinitely. And once you dispose of the body, the right is exhausted. You don't get to keep it. Karmic, you're right. Can you talk about Pierce College and Mercy University articulation agreement, organizational management program, career pathway, and funeral home management? I can't get a response from the school. Which school? Is it the Pierce College or Mercy? So I'll move on to the next question, and then I'll respond to yours when you throw something back. Has anyone heard of Everest Funeral Concierge? Whoopsies. They just called looking for our GPL. Provided to them, but I wondered if anyone had ever dealt with them before. So the reason why I'm bringing this one up, because there was actually a response to this to say, yeah, I get calls from these concierge folks all the time. I just basically hang up on them, and I don't provide it. That's a great way to get your butt in trouble, okay? If Donald Trump called you and said, I need you to send a GPL, how much does a funeral cost? Can you send... I need a GPL. You got to provide the GPL, okay? You got to give Donald Trump accurate pricing. If Donald Trump calling you, if Donald Trump walks into your funeral home, you got to give him a general price list. It is a best practice that if a person wants you to send them a GPL, you just send them the GPL because it avoids the problem. So send them a PDF, whatever it's going to be. Under the current state of the FTC funeral rule, you are not required to send someone over a phone call. I get that. It is best practice to do it, largely because it's probably coming when they revise the rule. Okay? So the bigger thing here are these concierge services. Now, you can't stop them from doing their job. Okay? You can't stop them from doing their job, which is collecting your pricing. And if they ask you how much something is, you have to provide it to them. So you really have two options. You can sit on the phone for 30 minutes while they literally go through a GPL and ask you for every price, which I would find that to be incredibly more annoying, or just send them the dang PDF and move on with your life. There's another type of concierge that takes this to an evolutionary conclusion, which is then they come in with the family and they play funeral director. I have a problem with those. I don't have a problem that they come in, they sit in on the arrangement. Family can bring whoever the hell they want. But I have a problem when they try to take charge. I absolutely would not let these folks play funeral director the day of the funeral. Okay? You are the funeral director for the firm that is listed on the death certificate, and you are responsible for all activities that occur during the funeral. And if frickin' frack are going to show up and then try to boss you around because they're the concierges, not going to work, especially if they're unlicensed. And if they're licensed, you have every right to ask for a copy of their insurance policy. And the reason for that is simple. You need to make sure that if something goes wrong, that you're going to be able to join them on the lawsuit or the complaint in order to claim against their insurance, because they have now inserted themselves into the transaction and are trying to circumvent you. That could also be considered in some jurisdictions unlicensed activity. So if all this group is a pricing concierge, which, hey, inquiring minds want to find out, let's bring up our little friends over here. Look at that, popped right up. Oh, and they're in Houston. Look at that. Okay, yeah, so they're a referral service. Who are your agents? Oh, so this is cute. This is a pre-need business. I can already see there's one problem I don't like here. They got an international number. Dude, it's like they have the same web page with just different banners on top. So what are their concierge services? Yeah, they're doing your job. They're inserting themselves right in the middle of the transaction. That's cute. And if they're licensed directors, they're licensed directors, man. There's not much you can really do about that. I would ask for a copy of their insurance policy. I would absolutely ask for a copy of their insurance policies. Ooh, compare local funeral home prices easily. Oh, this is great. Let's do St. Petersburg, Florida. Dink, dink. Oh, D. Giuseppe bought Arlie Williams. Okay. They're corporate now. Sorensen. Oh, look at that. There's my old business. Okay. Next. Okay, so it actually doesn't let me choose. Yeah, I'm not creating an account. Didn't even let me choose what type of services I wanted. That's nuts. So that's cute. These are actually funeral directors, basically playing the pricing game for you. Can't stop stuff like that. That's actually hard. But once again, if someone asks for pricing on the phone, you have to provide correct pricing. If it's a concierge service, they can literally just sit there and ask you all 16, and there's nothing you can do about it. FTC does not say if they're a concierge service, you can say no. FTC says you must provide accurate pricing to any caller. Last one. Hypothetically, if a funeral home had you sign an NDA as an apprentice, anything against the law is not protected under it, correct? Absolutely not protected. You cannot have an NDA as a means to stop someone from reporting actual violations of law. I witnessed many intentional violations of the state board and was told that I cannot say anything because I signed an NDA. You can report them for violations. If they try to sue you, then that's also going to reflect poorly against them. Probably have to get an attorney to defend yourself nonetheless. I mean, they're going to come at you no matter what, so how you want to respond to that is how you want to respond to that. Along with the apprentice, we're left alone at the premise, so we make arrangements with the families or to embalm alone and to forge the embalming log. So you better have proof to back that up. Because, you know, the problem with those type of situations, you look at the document, it doesn't say that. So it's your word against the written documentation. So this is actually not an uncommon thing, okay? And worse yet, if you forged the log, so you actually did that because you were told to, you broke the law. Another time I was left alone to work a funeral at a graveside by myself, okay? The owners were never around. 90% of the time the funeral home ran on the apprentices alone, okay? You really, if you're trying to go against something like that, you really need to have family testimonials. Okay, it can't just be you saying it. You need to have family testimonials where a family is going to come forward and say, "Oh yeah, John Smith was the person that we met with and signed everything." What do you mean he wasn't a funeral director? We had no idea. He was just a licensed apprentice at that time. Okay. So I've been looking at the Texas laws, and in the state of Texas, there's an actual complaint form, and you have to provide your personal information on the complaint form to lodge the complaint. So, to answer your question again, if you are under an NDA, you can still report people for violations of law. You're under an affirmative obligation to do that, especially if you think you want to get licensed in that same jurisdiction. If you were doing the things that you shouldn't be doing, and you knew you shouldn't be doing it, the state doesn't care if you're going to whistleblow. You still did some bad things, and you're still going to suffer consequences for it. That's just unfortunate for you. The only time the owners were there is when we had a high-profile funeral. I want to report to the board, but I need to know legally what I can say and cannot say when naming the establishment. I also wanted to state that I do have proof of everything in this post. I kept all evidence. Okay. Then really the best thing for you to do is you need to probably go to an employment lawyer and sit down with them to talk about the laws of your jurisdiction and how you should proceed with something like this. And you should bring a copy of the NDA with you. But generally speaking, now I am not an attorney, I am not licensed to give legal advice, I am not licensed to practice law. What I'm saying is for educational purposes, and with a healthy dose of common sense. An NDA cannot prohibit you from acting in a legal fashion. What you're going to run into, because I've seen this happen before, is a person allowed these things to happen, then they whistle-blew after the fact, right? And generally it's because they're now unhappy with the employer. They're finally pissed off enough to do something about it. But you allowed it to happen. And the state's not going to forget that. So, should you report it? Unlicensed activity should be reported. Improper activity and violations of code should be reported. Do you need to know exactly what situation you're in? You need to sit down with an attorney, an employment attorney, and go over that. And maybe you find one that gives you a free hour to sit down for the consultation. Maybe they charge you $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 for that hour. Don't know what to tell you. But if you allowed this to happen, and now you're trying to put a stop to it, you've put yourself in a bad place. And keep that in mind, because I've seen that happen. All right, back to the stuff. Mercy, I've emailed the Mercy U contacts for the program. So do me a favor, go to www.pierce.edu. I think my email is on there. And just send me an email to my work email forwarding what you have tried to contact at Mercy. I can forward that along to the people we have at Mercy. There might have been a personnel change, might be new people in charge there. I know that we recently redid an articulation agreement with a college, but I want to say that was like North Atlantic. I don't think I've spoken to Mercy this year. And I'm not going to open my email while I'm on a live stream for confidentiality reasons. But if you send me that you've been reaching out and can't get in contact with them, on our end, we will go ahead and follow up as well and try to get a hold of what's going on there. So feel free to get my email address off of one of the Pierce sites. It's there somewhere. And I should be able to help you with that. Not over the weekend. Let's be honest. No one's going to be there at Mercy over the weekend. So I'll be dealing with that first thing on Monday if that email comes in. And I appreciate you telling me about that. We form these articulation agreements. We take them seriously. We want to make sure our partners are also, doing what they need to do on their end. Howard Beckham says, what about death doulas? The death doula thing is an interesting situation. I know that there was a case in Indiana that was recently figured out, and the death doula was not found to be practicing funeral directing. So again, if a death doula wants to come with a family and wants to sit in on arrangements, and the family allows them in the arrangements, there's nothing you can do about that. They're not there because they're a death doula. They're there at the request of the family. If the family wants to bring in a pastor, they can bring in a pastor. They want to bring in Joe Biden, they can bring in Joe Biden. We've had enough Donald Trump. Time for the other side of the political spectrum. So they can bring in whoever they want. What people can't do is play funeral director. That's ultimately the issue. That's why you need to know the laws of your jurisdiction. So like if a death doula shows up the date of the services and starts directing people to chairs and says, come on, let's go close the casket, and starts leading them out the door, death doula can't do that. Death doula wants to do that, they need to be a licensed funeral director. And if they're going to do that, then you as the funeral director need to step aside and make sure that you have a copy of their insurance policy. Because they're not employed by your firm. So there has to be like a really strong reality check. We have not dealt with this in funeral service. We're not used to other funeral directors coming into our firm and trying to take over what we are responsible for. And that's a huge problem. It's why the first thing I've said so many times now, when you deal with someone that's playing that game, yo, I need a copy of your insurance policy. And then once you get it, you call the insurance company to ensure that it is in force. People have been burned because they present an insurance. I have a buddy of mine who is a former student, DeAndre. And DeAndre worked personal security for years and years and years and years. And the firm he worked for provided insurance documentation to a client. The client called the insurance company, and that's when the employees of the security company and the client found out that the insurance policy lapsed. So you ask for the policy and you verify that it is in force. Now, there are some places, some insurance companies, which are a real pain in the ass, where they won't even tell you if the policy is active or in force. Well, here's the thing. If you have the person that is named on the policy, the owner of that business, you call them while they're standing there. Well, we can't tell you that. Oh, is that so? Well, hey, I'm going to put on Jerry Smith, who's the person on this policy. I'm going to put him on speaker. They're going to give you the personal information, and you're going to tell them whether the policy is active while I listen in. And if Jerry Smith doesn't want to do that, you throw him the hell out of your funeral home. Like, You're not under an obligation to let other people do your job and then you take the burden for it. Like, that is a really messy, messy situation they are creating playing that game. Throttle Bunny, just want to say your videos helped me tremendously when I was going to Gupton College, and I really appreciate all the lectures and resources you put online to help students like me. Thank you. You are welcome. You are welcome. And I hope that you are now licensed or are actively getting ready to take your exams and get licensed, and wish you every success with that. Look forward to seeing you in the industry. If you're ever at NFDA or one of the conventions I'm at, stop by the Pierce table, say hi. Let me know. Delete. All right, folks. So once again, we are at the conclusion of that time. If there's no more questions, I'll give it just about another minute or so for any last-minute questions. And I will look forward to that email. Really concerned that you haven't heard back from Mercy, because I remember speaking with them, I think, 2 years ago when we first, or either we first put it in force or we re-upped it. They seemed on the ball. They seemed like it was a good situation. So sorry you had this situation. I'm hoping it's just a miscommunication, changed email, or a change of staff. I really do hope that is the situation. All right, folks. See you nothing. Hey, thank you all for stopping on by tonight and hanging out for the first Fridays with Finn for 2026. I will probably do one of these when I come back from the Educator Conference in April. We'll talk about how that went. And we'll see you then. And good to see you as well, Howard. Look forward to seeing you in Houston here in a couple of weeks. Take care of yourself as well. Everyone take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.